My name is Callum, and for most of my life, I believe trust was straightforward, a gift freely given to someone you loved. I never imagined the person who would challenge that trust most would be someone I thought I'd grow old with. Marley. She had this infectious, untamed energy that drew people in effortlessly. You couldn't really hold a grudge against her. Her smile had a way of making you feel included, like she was letting you in on a secret meant just for you. For a long time, that smile felt like home. We had been together nearly 4 years when something changed. At first, it seemed trivial. Marley mentioned that her friends were planning a weekend trip to the coast. I didn't think much of it. She traveled with them often, and I trusted her. But 2 nights before the trip, she casually added that her ex, Rowan, would be coming along. It wasn't the ex part that unsettled me. It was how she said his name, careful, deliberate, as if she were hoping I wouldn't notice. I tried to brush it off, but she could sense the tension. "Cal," she said, pressing a hand to my chest, "it's nothing. We're all adults. You trust me, right?" I wanted to, so I nodded. Of course. But in the days leading up to her leaving, a quiet unease settled in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was something deeper, a sense that the ground beneath me was shifting, though I wasn't yet sure whether it was me or her. The day of her departure, I helped load her bags into Aria's car. Marley kissed me goodbye, quick, familiar, but there was an intensity in her eyes I couldn't place. For the first few hours, everything seemed normal. Texts, a few photos of the coastline. Then, just after sunset, a single message appeared. "Hey, just a heads up. Rowan's here. Relax." I stared at it, feeling the warmth in my chest drain. That word, relax, wasn't comforting. It was dismissive, almost patronizing, like I was unreasonable for feeling anything at all. I typed back carefully. "If you need to tell me to relax, maybe you shouldn't be doing things that make me tense in the first place." I didn't expect an argument. I didn't expect anything, really, but what I got was silence, 12 hours of it. No goodnight, no check-ins, nothing. Morning came, and I convinced myself I was overthinking. She was probably just tired. She'd message me soon. She didn't. It wasn't until early afternoon that her name appeared on my phone, but it wasn't a soft apology or an explanation, it was a call. Her voice was sharp, trembling with anger. "What was that text last night? Why would you say something like that? Why are you trying to start drama when I'm just trying to enjoy my trip?" I blinked. "Marley, you're the one who told me to relax. You always get like this," she snapped. "Always assuming the worst. That's not fair." And yet, somehow, it became my fault. I had never accused her of cheating, never tried to control her, never even asked about Rowan. But she made it sound like my feelings were the problem, like my very concern was inconvenient. I stayed calm. "Marley, I didn't accuse you of anything. I just didn't like how you said it." "Well, maybe you should grow up," she fired back. "I'm not going to babysit your insecurities every time I go somewhere." And then the call ended abruptly. No explanation, no attempt to understand, just anger. And that became the pattern. Every day of the trip, sometimes multiple times a day, she called. Always angry, always sharp, at my tone, my timing, my silence, my texts, my lack of texts. Every imagined slight became a fight she needed to have. It felt like she was creating conflict to avoid addressing something I wasn't even asking about. By the time she returned Sunday night, something in me had already shifted. It wasn't anger or jealousy, just clarity. Marley walked in like she was carrying 2 lives. One carefree and adored, the other tense and angry, needing confrontation to hide something else. She tossed her bag into the hallway, brushed past me, and headed straight for the kitchen, not even saying hello. She pulled a bottle of water from the fridge without so much as a glance in my direction. "Trip go okay?" I asked softly. She took a sip, shrugged, and replied, "It was fine. You made it more stressful than it needed to be." That familiar, unexplained irritation surfaced again, the kind that felt like she needed me to play the villain so she could avoid confronting herself. I said nothing. I simply nodded and stepped aside as she passed into our bedroom. For the first time in years, I didn't follow. I didn't try to soften her mood, didn't attempt to fix anything. I let the silence hang. The next morning, she was normal. Too normal. Cheerful, even. She made coffee, hummed a little tune, asked about my plans. As if the last 3 days of angry phone calls had never happened. It was disorienting, mostly exhausting. Over the following week, things shifted in strange ways. Some mornings, she clung to me, arms wrapped around mine as if she couldn't bear to be apart. Other days, she picked fights over minor things, a dish left unwashed, a text replied to too slowly, a sigh misread as criticism. She had never acted like this before. It was as if she were trying to outrun something she couldn't name. I could sense its shape in her avoidance of my eyes, in the overdefense of trivial disagreements, in her insistence that I was the problem. It was easier for her that way. Almost 2 weeks after the trip, we sat on the couch watching a movie. She leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder, legs curled beneath her. For a moment, it felt like us again. Then her phone buzzed. She lifted her head, glanced at it, and turned it face down so quickly she nearly dropped it. A subtle motion, but enough. I said nothing, didn't question, didn't even look at her. Maybe that was what unsettled her most. My quiet. "Why are you being weird?" she asked abruptly. "I'm not," I said. "You are. You're distant." "Why?" "Because I went on a trip," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Because my ex was there. I told you it meant nothing. But Molly, you've been angry at me since before you left." She opened her mouth, closed it, searched for some accusation, justification, anything that would land. Nothing came. She wasn't angry now. She wasn't loud. She just looked scared. "What do you think happened on that trip?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said. "But something changed," she admitted softly. That was the moment she broke. She didn't cry, Molly wasn't a crier, but she folded in on herself slightly, shoulders tightening, her breath faintly trembling. "I didn't do anything," she said, voice low. "But I remembered things, how Rowan made me feel, how simple it all seemed. I guess I got caught up in nostalgia. That's all." It wasn't a confession of cheating. It wasn't meant to be cruel. It was just honest in a way she hadn't been since the trip. And it hurt more than any betrayal could. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't like the way it made me feel," she admitted. "And I didn't want you to think I didn't love you." In that moment, I understood. She hadn't cheated. She hadn't betrayed me physically, but emotionally, she had stepped outside the relationship, even unintentionally. The guilt had been gnawing at her quietly, turning into anger whenever she looked at me. I reached for her hand, not to soothe her, but to anchor myself in the truth of the moment. "Molly," I said gently, "I'm not angry. But things can't go back to the way they were. Not unless you're honest. Not unless you're fully here. Not just in body, but in everything." She looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time in weeks. "I want to be here," she whispered. "I do." Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she was still untangling feelings she didn't understand. But one thing was clear. I wasn't chasing reassurance anymore. I wasn't arguing with her guilt. I wasn't fixing emotions that weren't mine. She would either choose us, fully, or drift away. I stood, kissed her forehead softly, and said, "Then show me." For the first time since that trip, the silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like truth. Steady, quiet, and waiting.